Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babiar, and I'm the Training Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you're a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, fully funded Great Commission worker. My guest today is Callie Buchholtz, and Callie and I get to serve together on the Support Raising Solutions team. Callie gets to work with resources and kind of directing and developing and all sorts of good stuff like that. And I'm just kind of the big mouth around SRS. I'm just one that talks a lot, right? Would that be a pretty much?
You do it so well, Aaron.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'm affirmed. I don't know. Anyway, well, Callie, I invited you back onto the podcast this week to talk about what is kind of a hard conversation for people, because it's not just about money. It's specifically about how much money you personally need, how much money you personally get. And I'm talking receiving a salary. I'm not talking about raising organizational funds. We're not talking about, oh, hey, I have a project. I need to raise some money because we need to buy that vehicle because we're going to be out in the bush, or we need to build this building. I'm really talking about personally you, the support raiser. How much money do you get to make, or should you make? So let's start right there. Callie, what's your salary? Just kidding. No, we're not gonna do that to you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Wow, I got really personal up in here. No, really the conversation is determining your ministry salary. And that is not so easy to set. In fact, it is a common question I will get at support raising boot camps, where people are like, how do I know how much I get to make? And sometimes I hear that out of, well, I don't want to have to raise that much, which that's not real healthy. But we're not even really talking about that. We're more talking along the lines of what's healthy. How much is that amount that your family and ministry can thrive? Your vision, your family both can thrive, not either or, both. How much is that amount? And obviously, we can't just answer that. This is kind of a random podcast and go anywhere in the world. We're going to talk through a prism probably of US dollars if we bring up finances, like specifics at all, but really that's not probably where we're going to land so much. So first of all, let's just talk about the standpoint of somebody is going to raise their funds and they're with an organization that tells them specifically, hey, you get to raise X. So let's answer that from a couple of different ways. Callie, what do you tell somebody who their organization is telling them you get to raise X, and when they look at their needs and they look at what they get to do and they get, where they're moving towards, they realize, I don't think I actually need that much. What would you counsel that person to continue processing?
Well, the first thing I would look at is what your company or organization is communicating. Is it needs-based or position role-based?
Okay.
And some organizations are a little more similar to the secular role, saying managers all get paid this much and directors all get paid this much, and set it that way. I would say that might be a little more rare, a little less common. I personally have heard more need-based salary setup. Mm-hmm. But that would be one difference, in that if you're saying, well, it's too much, it might be, well, that is comparable for all the managers or all the people in your position.
Right.
So that kind of answers the question pretty simply.
Yes.
On the flip side, if it's need-based, well, then that's a point of looking at, okay, what needs have they outlined? Is there anything they're including that I didn't think of?
Yeah, you might not even be aware.
Retirement. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there might be
healthcare.
some things. Yeah. Oh, that's a big one.
By the way, I have noticed that when people have not ever had health problems, they are really unaware of how much healthcare can dramatically affect their budget. Ooh. Or the flip side, like with my family, we've had a lot, well documented in other podcasts. People don't realize how much that I need to raise, probably over and above some people, simply because we will have a 5-figure outlay a few times over every year in healthcare, and we need it. It's not like we're getting rich in ministry. It's we have actual healthcare things. And so, but a lot of times organizations will determine that, and some people just, whatever the organization says, they're fine. They just go for it. But yeah, that's there sometimes. It's like, wow, that seems like too much. So I hear you saying, ask questions, try and understand what it is.
Absolutely. And when it comes to anything that is need-based, you are responsible for understanding your life, understanding what the expectations are that the organization you're working for is laying out and seeing where they do and don't match up. Meaning your organization probably has a philosophy behind being need-based and how they set salary. Something like, we want all our workers to live on nothing but rice and beans, which is not healthy, but that could be a philosophy out there.
Well, and that's where I wanted to go next is what if, in looking at the need and looking at what a good vision-driven budget is for your family and ministry, what if you come to find out that the amount that's being told to you is, I'm not just talking a couple bucks off. Like, it's enough that you're going, wait a minute, did you want my family or my ministry to thrive?
Right.
Instead of both. Like, what do you do when you're with an organization that they're telling you what it is, and you got lights flashing going, I don't think this might be so good.
Well, actually, that was pretty similar to when I first started in ministry. I came fresh out of college, but have a very well-taught background in my family of financial peace and financial planning. So I was probably a little more aggressive in my budgeting and just general financial planning skills than most college grads.
Okay.
And so when I started ministry and they gave me this kind of rudimentary budget saying, here's how we set your need-based salary, I was looking at that. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of things you've left out.
Oh.
And in their mind, they were working mostly with a lot of college students that were just looking at a paycheck for the first time, hadn't started wanting to budget for certain things.
$15,000 a year? Yes.
I know, exactly. And so in my mind, I was just in a very probably different stage of life than what I was fitting into in their mind. So actually there was a lot of room, and I'm so happy this was true. And I found this true in multiple organizations that I've talked with, that I went back to them with the budget that I wrote up.
Okay.
Saying, okay, here is what I'm thinking for everything from groceries to car to all the expenses. And this is what they all add up to.
And for most people at that age, some student debt.
Yep, absolutely. And I laid it before them and said, so this is the number I've come up with and it doesn't match your number. Where do these expenses go? And it was something that they looked at it and they saw that I had a plan. I wasn't just trying to ask for more money. There was a purpose behind everything.
That's key, by the way. I want to affirm that. You weren't just saying, I want to make 30% more than what you said. It was like, no, here's what I'm thinking. This isn't a money grab. I'm not trying to live rich. Here's what I believe is a healthy, sober budget. It doesn't line up with what you gave me. Can you tell me what I should be doing differently, or can what you told me, can that flex a little? A lot of that's how you're postured and how you present it, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So they were 100% on board with changing my goal. And it was fantastic because the philosophy behind the organization setting my salary was, we want our staff to do well, but we don't want to overburden them with a goal that seems unreachable. So when I came to them, what I had fit that. I saw it as reachable because it also saw it as necessary. And their vision was that their staff thrive. And I really appreciated that. So it was actually a really easy conversation.
That's great. That's great. And that's what I would want it to be for everybody. And now we're going to go the other direction where it's not a great conversation. In fact, I think I shared on a different podcast, this topic came up at one point. This was one of, I think, the litmus tests that Steve Shadrack threw in front of me before I started taking over doing the boot camps was I had never met this person, but they had gotten a hold of Steve and they were having this very issue. And I don't remember the name of the organization. I wouldn't say it if I did, but the lady basically said, hey, I got 4 kids. My husband and I are moving to blank place in the world. The organization has determined that we can only make X for a salary. It's 40% less than what we need. I can prove it on paper. We're not trying to live rich. We just want everybody to eat and to have transportation and a house over our head. And they're unyielding. They're inflexible. They said, if we let you make any more, then you're going to make more than the president of our organization, who was living in a different place and didn't have all the, it was just one of those, they were comparing apples to eggs. Like, it just wasn't even a fair comparison, but it is what it was. And she was struggling and she said, what do I do? So I'd be happy to tell you my answer, but I want to hear yours first. So well, I have this kind of habit of just putting you on the spot, Callie. I apologize, but what do you do in that situation?
My first response, and I think I've shared this every time on this podcast, is to pray. you don't want to step forward in any decision in life, from buying a couch to especially your budget, without seeking the Lord. And then the next thing is, I think we can get so caught up in this not healthy ministry mentality of, oh, this, I have to do this, therefore I will sacrifice anything and everything to make it work. Mm-hmm. Instead of using wisdom. God gives us wisdom. Mm-hmm. And would you accept a paying job that didn't meet your bills? Is that viable?
Yeah. And again, just to say that again, would you accept a job in the quote unquote secular world that it was a job, but there were other options, and you knew that this job undervalued what you put into it and didn't allow you to take care of your family, didn't allow you to buy the food, pay for your roof, everything else? Would you accept that job in the secular world? And I'm sure what you're inferring here, Callie, is that easy answer is no. That doesn't mean that you're not called to do ministry, but
right.
Perhaps you're suggesting here, maybe this isn't the ministry fit for you.
And that's one of the questions that really hits on a couple different points that I've seen in healthy application processes of affirming God's calling. Yeah, God's calling you to work in this international school. Is God also calling you to work with us doing this?
Yeah.
And trying to discern where God is leading, because there are multiple ways to fill that passion God has put in your heart, and making sure that you didn't just take the first one that popped up. Maybe that is the right way, but did you stop and consider, is this what God wants for you? Which isn't an easy question, but I hope you've stopped and really thought it through and prayed it through.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, in the situation that Steve kind of threw in front of me in my early days with SRS, that's essentially what you're talking about. It was our conversation, and I was trying to affirm the lady and that it was good. She was asking these questions because she was not trying to get rich. I mean, she was just trying to go, I really want to do the vision God has given me. I don't see it happening on what they've quote unquote approved me for. Or if it does happen, my family is going to unnecessarily suffer. Like in my experience, God brings us to suffering. I don't want to compare our sufferings to somebody else's, comparison tends to just rob us of joy. So I'm not even going to step into that, but it's a difficult situation when you want to work with a particular ministry or organization or church even, and you go, wow, this just doesn't line up. This just is not a good fit. That doesn't mean you're disqualified for ministry. That doesn't mean that God hasn't given you a vision, but it might be time to pivot. It might be time to look for something similar that you can thrive in. And oh, by the way, our God, who is omniscient, totally allowed this to come into your life, knew you were going to go through this situation, and isn't surprised that you're wrestling with this stuff. And so that's where I come back to, I like what you said, is, well, you might just want to stop and pray.
Oh, yeah.
And seek the Lord and see how he's leading. And he might be leading you into some difficult conversations and changes, but he might also be, protecting you from some hard things that might just be the tip of the iceberg with that organization. If that's how they're treating you with that, how might they treat you in other things?
And one thing I'd love to press into a little bit, just from my own background, especially for parents, for families that are dealing with this question of either, oh my word, that's an overwhelming amount I have to raise, or this isn't going to be enough. Can we scrimp? Can we tighten up? I grew up with my parents having raised support, and it is a huge testimony to why I am in ministry today, because of how they succeeded at that. The amount of time, God's blessing, and the fact we were constantly fully funded. I felt like a normal kid.
Right.
We weren't living out of the missionary barrels. We lived wisely.
Wait, there's a barrel? I didn't get a barrel. When do I get my barrel?
But I felt like a normal kid. I went to school. I packed a lunch. We occasionally went out to the movies.
Right.
We took family vacations. Admittedly, they were camping vacations because my dad thought that was a great idea.
I like your dad.
Oh, he's pretty great. When it came to me even considering going into missions and raising support, it was a positive experience versus I have friends that will never go into ministry due to their childhood and the ramifications of what it meant for their family and the constraints and tight finances.
Yeah. Yeah.
That ministry to them means going without, going with little, and barely getting by in life.
Yeah. Yeah. If you love to read, we have an entire blog article archive on support raising, from biblical encouragement to practical tips to stories and personal experiences. Meanwhile, there's different articles that are more along the lines of shaping culture, elevating training, and building infrastructure so that you can multiply your coaching within your missions organization. Either way, you might want to go check out some of our articles at supportraisingsolutions.org/blog. Well, let's segue, because a lot of what we're talking about here, at least to this point, was interacting with determining ministry salary when you are working with or an organization that's kind of telling you what to do. And that's not a bad thing, but that's not everybody's experience. We have people that, in some ways, you determine your ministry salary. How much are you going to make? Well, that's up to you. Wow, that gets pretty hard. And I went through that, so I have some experience there. But I don't know that I had some of the struggles that other people did, and not that I was any better. It's just I think I landed on some good things that worked for me. But sometimes people they don't even know where to start. They've started a nonprofit. They've raised enough funds to kind of get the organization going, and then they got to the point where, like, oh wow, organization isn't going to do much more if I can't give it much more time. I can't give it much more time if I don't actually have personal support. Well, I didn't start this to get rich, but I need money. How do I figure this out? So what is your initial response when someone brings that sort of question to you?
My first thought is it's a decision you don't want to make alone.
Good.
It was really helpful for me, not that I even really had to communicate it much to anyone as I've raised support, but to know that there was someone outside myself affirming that this is the amount that is good for Callie to raise.
Mm-hmm.
And if I ever need to pull it out, I can say, actually, this is affirmed by my boss, my supervisor, my team.
Yeah.
Now, they actually said it, but even just be able to say, hey, this is confirmed by my board or by my pastor, to have someone else give their validity to whatever number you're trying to set.
That authentication, that it's not like, well, my name is Callie and I thought of it, therefore it's a good idea.
Oh, yeah, no.
Now, there might be some listeners who are like, I'm good with that. I'll just make it up. And we're going, no, hold on. It's good to have accountability. It's good to have someone that go, yeah, that's fair. And more often than not, when I've dealt with ministry leaders that have to raise their own support, your issue is usually that you're not giving yourself enough credit.
Yes.
Not giving yourself too much, but you want to make sure that you know which is which. And I even had a time in my life not that long ago where a person of influence in my life that is privy to my salary numbers and all that kind of stuff just said, hey, Aaron, I know you're doing okay, and yeah, you're fully funded by this definition, but what about that definition? Because, and this is a person that really has the authority to speak into my life. And they said, really think you should probably be moving more in that direction, particularly because of your family's health bills and stuff like that. And I was like, oh. Now, I'll be honest, the amount that I needed to raise additionally, I wasn't super excited about. Just because of the work it was going to take and the time. And yet also I was like, I'm really thankful that person had the freedom to go, you might be unnecessarily sacrificing too much. And your family could probably thrive a little bit better if you stepped up in your support raising. You're trying to help teach the world how to do this. Maybe you should walk the walk and talk the talk yourself. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fair. So anyway, but unfortunately, sometimes people, they don't have that. They're just getting started. They don't know where to go. So let's make a couple suggestions as people are trying to determine their salary, perhaps for the first time or the first time in a long time or whatever else. What are some initial thoughts you might have? And you're welcome to push back on me as well on this topic.
Oh, boy. I would start with just trying to find a comparable position in the secular world to give you a ballpark to start with, instead of just saying $0 and $100,000 and
Right.
shoot a dart in the middle. Give yourself a place to start with, and then it's easier to make smaller adjustments.
Yeah. Now, if you're wondering where that is, I don't know what your context is. If you do happen to live in the United States, in some places, in fact, many places in the United States at least, the local school teacher salary schedule is free and available online. And you can pull that up and look everything from the part-time teacher's aide to the school district superintendent. And I guarantee you they make very different salaries. But you can kind of figure out, looking at that sometimes, what are the comps? What are the things around here? Let's say you have a college degree and you've worked in youth ministry for 3 years, but now you're moving into a different type of ministry where you raise your full support. Well, maybe those that might be on your support team, and they might agree with you, well, yeah, local school teachers that have taught for 3 years make X, so I'm trying to make X. Again, I will come back to, that's a great comp. You want a couple trusted people in your life that aren't all about doing things as cheaply as possible, nor are they about trying to make sure you get rich. You want to have some wise people, but having something like that, Callie, I think is really wise. That's one of the comps. That's kind of been one of my more common ones I like to look at. What other suggestions might there be?
I think also, if you don't know how to budget well, you need to educate yourself. So we're talking about, starting there and maybe making some adjustments so you're having a healthy budget. If you don't even know what that means, definitely look into that. This is not something that you just freewheel, but talking about, do you have a sense of what it means to save, to give, to map out a monthly budget so you know what's going to groceries, what's going to clothes, how you're paying your bills. If that's a foreign concept to you, you definitely need to get a handle on what that looks like. And there's a ton of resources out there. Just Google it, and man, things are going to pop up.
There are, but I will recommend a couple. Freedom 5-1 Ministries. I know a couple of people on staff at that ministry. They actually love to work with ministry leaders in particular. They will work with other people, but they love working with ministry leaders and helping them develop a healthy personal budget. And so I recommend them very highly, Freedom 5-1 Ministries. And then what a lot of people have access to is like a Crown Financial Ministries or like a Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University.
I'm a Financial Peace graduate. It's fantastic.
Yeah. In fact, early on, when I was determining my own salary, because that was true of me at one point, I went through the Dave Ramsey Entrepreneurial Leadership Week because I was just trying to figure out, I know I'm called to ministry. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know necessarily exactly where I'm going to land in all this, but I'm feeling entrepreneurial-ish, but my point is not to make money and all that kind of stuff. And I actually went through that just because I was like, wow, I'm realizing if I don't have a good mindset for how the finances go for this ministry, I won't have a ministry. And my point isn't to make money. I just want to be wise with the finances we have. I want to be respectable, want to be above reproach. Don't want to make too much, don't want to make too little, and so that's why I went through that. So yeah, I affirm that that's very wise. If you're not maintaining at least a simple budget on a regular basis in your personal life with your own family, it's not going to probably go very well for you when you're trying to run a ministry budget. You might need to seek some maturity and growth before you run too far down that road.
Yeah. And I think what I hear us saying, Aaron, is this is an informed decision process. This is not just shooting in the dark, hoping something works out. Hey, why not? Let's just try this. This is very much a well thought through budget that you are proposing, getting affirmation and confirmation on, that there is reason and logic behind why you're setting it where you're setting it. So should someone ask, hey, like, why is that being set that way? You actually have an answer more than just, well, it's a nice round number.
By the way, it happened very infrequently when somebody would ask me about what my budget was as I was raising support. However, though I don't know that it needs to be a part of your presentation, in fact, I think it might be a distraction, you should know what those numbers are for when people ask, and you should know how you're going to answer that question. And so I to this day, I feel very comfortable when somebody does. It's rare, but when somebody does ask me about my salary, I can say, hey, it's comparable to Bentonville School District in Bentonville, Arkansas, because I live right on the edge of Rogers and Bentonville. And that's just a very safe, simple way of them going, oh, okay, Aaron's not making $3 billion a year. He's not in this for the money, but his family's eating. Okay, good. So anyway, Well, I know we haven't completely exhausted this topic, but I know that there's been some good food for thought here. So we appreciate when people send in questions. This is a common question we get at the SRS boot camps. But if this has spurred some other questions for you, we encourage you to send in an email and or click on the link in the podcast and let us know what questions you might have regarding support raising and how to move forward. So, Callie, thank you again for joining me today. As always, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisingsolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcast from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.